Hi everyone, my name is Adam Weiser and I will be the host of this week's Loremaker's Guide to the Galaxy. For those who haven't seen this before, it's a segment where the various Loremakers on Star Citizen sit down, walk you through a particular system, give you a little bit of the history, a little bit of the science data behind why it is the way it is. So this week we're going to be talking about a pretty interesting system because it is technically a UEE system, but for those who live there, both on both sides of the law, there's pretty strong agreement that the UEE doesn't have full control of it. So this week we are going to go and check out the Nexus system. So to do that, we're just going to hit / here on the star map so you can bring up the search bar, and we're going to put in Nexus. There we go. And here we will travel from Sol to the Nexus system. So we're going to do a broad overview to start. This is a 5-planet system that has an asteroid belt here between Nexus 3 and Nexus 4. At the center of this system is a wow, that's a very, very close-in zoom we got here. This is a Type A main sequence star that is bluish-white in color, and just so you know, it's about 1.8 times larger in solar mass than the Sun at the center of our own system. But to really kind of, just kind of set the table for what Nexus is, I want to start by talking about Nexus 2. Now, Nexus 2 right here, this is a terrestrial smog planet. So it's got this very thick and soupy atmosphere, which kind of gives off this really interesting glow. I don't think the skin color on this is going to be the actual color in the game, but we'll see about that. But this atmosphere is going to glow a little bit because of something that's a part of it called aerosols. And aerosols are basically, solids and liquid particles that are in a gas, or in the case of Nexus 2, in the upper atmosphere of this planet. Now, you're familiar with aerosols because, when they get big enough, they draw your attention to them. Think of a hazy, smoggy day. Think of that red hue you see on the horizon during sunrises and sunsets. Those are all because aerosols are absorbing and scattering light because they've gotten big enough while up there in the atmosphere. Now, why this makes sense for the Nexus system is because prior to 2930, this entire system was basically, even though UEE in name, was basically a pirate free-for-all. And it wasn't until Keller's run in 2930 that the UEE actually saw how big of a pirate problem was in the system and what needed to be done to kind of put a stop to that. Now, Dean Keller was a lifelong criminal. He was an assassin for various pirate crews. He was a very, very skilled pilot. And on May 20th of 2930, he shot an undercover UEE agent in a Cathcart bar. What proceeded from there was a 5-system run he went on with the UEE advocacy in pursuit, which kind of culminated here in the Nexus system. Now, what really shocked the UEE advocacy was that they came into this UEE system hoping that they could finally corner him, only to see the pirate clans there not back down from their presence, but actually kind of come at them while they were there. And that was shocking for them. The advocacy wasn't even the group that finally ended Keller's run. It was a civilian by the name of Anna Flynn who finally, did the last shot that took him down. After seeing the spectacle on the spectrum, she joined the hunt to end Keller's run and wound up with the big bounty she got for making the most famous probably catch in bounty history. Once again, that happened in 2930. It's right now 2946 in the UEE. And by all accounts, even by the UEE's own account, this system is still not fully within their control. It's still a very heavy pirate presence here. And part of the reason to understand why this is happening is if we go out to the bigger view here. So Nexus only has 4 jump points into it. They're all access. I'll turn all these on so you can see there's a medium and they're the small. But still, Nexus only has 4. And out of those 4, 3 of them, as you can see, are unclaimed systems with that probably see a lot of unlawful activity in them. So it's very hard for the UEE, even to this day, to control the pirates and other unlawful people coming in and out of this system. As you can also see here, Nexus got its name because it does sit at the center of these pirate systems. And that's one of the other rumors that kind of went around, was that the UEE pushing hard to reclaim the Nexus system was less about Keller's run, and it was more about the strength of Cathcart and the strength of Nexus as pirate havens, that they might actually start their own independent government. There were rumblings of this in the underworld at the time. And so some believe the UE actually pushed into the Nexus system to be able to break up this little swarm of pirate systems, so they didn't have a completely uncontrolled neighborhood in the UEE that they had nothing to do with. So, of course, the real question is, how did this even start? Now, Nexus was discovered a long time ago. It was discovered back in 2445 by a UNE Navy pilot by the name of Dominic Thapa. Now, Dominic Thapa actually found this system from Cathcart. So let me back up here so you can see this again. So he actually came in from Cathcart, which you see is an unclaimed system, but in the 25th century was actually a military classified system. So the military had the system. That's how they found this jump to go to Nexus. But they also had an issue. If this was a military classified system, how do you get civilians, how do you get citizens into Nexus without going through this part of space that you don't want them to go through? So for the first 20 plus years of the UNE, of the Nexus's being known to humanity, this was known simply as the military designation, which is UDS 2445-309, just the discovery date UDS. And the military came on in and they decided, okay, well, if we don't want to let anyone get here, let's see what we can do with it. So what they did with it is they set up their operation, the main operation here on Nexus 3, which is a naturally habitable planet, so the perfect place to set up their operations. We come out here, they also started to terraform Lago, because Lago is has a ton of minerals and resources on it, so they began the terraforming process there. And then let's go back to Nexus 2, the place we started, that I thought was so interesting. This, like I said, is a smog planet, so it's got a very thick, soupy atmosphere. That atmosphere is actually made out of nitrogen. It's a majority nitrogen atmosphere, which is not all that common. In our solar system, Earth has a majority nitrogen atmosphere, and the only other one that's like that is Titan, a moon of one of the moons of Saturn. So this being the 25th century, this being humanity's first starting to strike out into the universe, they figured, well, let's see if we can possibly terraform this smog planet to make it human habitable. And they dropped a lot of money into doing this. Unfortunately, nothing they did stuck. What they did do is they did rack up big budget deficits, terraforming this planet, terraforming Lago, having this entire system that unfortunately they weren't quite really getting any resources out of yet. So with the Universalist-led government at the time in the UEE realizing that they were in some serious budgetary constraints, they had kind of a brilliant idea. Once again, we can't just let anyone and everyone pass through Cathcart, pass through this classified system to come visit Nexus. So they decided to sell the entire system to one company. Now, some of you, this may sound familiar because this was actually a strategy the UEE government would use a few hundred years later in the Stanton system. Instead of selling the entirety of the Stanton system, they sold each specific planet to a corporation as a way to raise funds for the government. So this is where it all started, in Nexus. And so in 2468, the Hather group bought Nexus from the UNE and basically moved in and brought in their own contractors to start the mining process. Now, much like the UNE, they set up their main operations here on Nexus 3, and they started to work the Elsi Bray asteroid belt here, which is just chock full of resources. They also, I'm going to swing this around, started to really strip mine Lago. Because remember, this was a company that had spent a lot of money on this entire system. They weren't worried about building up civilian infrastructure or anything like that. They just wanted the most efficient way in which to extract these ores and these minerals from this planet. And that was literally just strip mining them away. So over the next 200 years, this system wasn't really known as Nexus. It was known as Hather because of the because of the company that owned it. At that time also, a few things happened which seemed to affect the fate of Nexus. We're going to go back out to the wide view here. First, the Cathcart System, which was military classified, the UEE walked away from. They decided they didn't need it anymore, that it wasn't going to be of any benefit to them, so they left. And a pirate presence, a very strong unlawful presence, started to move in and turn Cathcart into the system we know it as today. Within that 200-year period also, these 3 other jumps were discovered into Nexus, which meant now there were new routes or new ways for people or pirates to get into this system. So for those 200 years while Hathor ruled this, there were really only 2 businesses that were functional in this system: the Hathor Mining Group and criminality, people coming in to drink and gamble with the miners that were working this system. Eventually, in 2672, the Hathor Group looked at their books and they realized they'd ripped out most of the resources on Lago, they'd kind of depleted the Elsi belt, and the money they were spent protecting shipments in and out of this system finally exceeded any of the profits they were making here. So the Hathor Group just left. They were done with it. They had gotten what they needed out of it, and they turned it over completely to the pirates. So at that point, in the late 27th century into the 28th century, is when the pirate presence in Nexus really grew. That's where it got the name Nexus, for being a nexus of jump points connecting pirate systems. That brings us up to 2930. That presence only grew until Keller's run in 2930, where the UEE finally decided to push back in and try to reestablish their authority in the system. So now that you kind of have an understanding of the complicated and tumultuous history of the system, let's get back into a little more details on what's actually here. So Nexus 1 is a rocky protoplanet that you can see is extremely close to the, it's close to the star. Again, these aren't quite to scale, but you can tell by the distance that it's been charred thoroughly. Hathor Group did do their due diligence, and they checked and they made sure that there were no resources of anything worthwhile on this planet to mine. Nexus 2 we talked about, that's your terrestrial smog planet. Once again, right now, there's nothing to really do there. You can't live there. Nexus 3, as I mentioned before, was naturally habitable, so it became the main base for basically every group that kind of had control over the Nexus system. It's where the UNE first established their operations. It's where the Hathor Group central kind of like mining command was all based here. And after they left, it is where the pirates immediately moved in to kind of like, some of the main pirate groups were based here too. So in 2930, when the UEE decided to retake this system, this planet, Nexus 3, is where they primarily focused to start. So once they pushed the pirates off this planet, they basically turned this into central command for the system, and it still is that to this day. It is a military classified planet, so when you visit Nexus System, unless you have the proper clearance codes, please do not go anywhere near this planet because they will not take kindly to it. The next thing in the system to really talk about is, you'll see rimmed here, is the Bray asteroid belt. Again, it was filled with minerals and ores which the Hathor Group mined away, but recent advances in scanning technology have revealed that there are pockets of really valuable minerals and ores here that hadn't been discovered before. So it's another one of the conspiracy theories out there about the Nexus system, is the UEE wanted to push back in, not because of the pirate presence, but to ensure that they had access to these valuable minerals and ores here in the Elsi belt. This belt was also the location for probably the most famous moment in Keller's run. After spending hours kind of like dodging in and, around asteroids and kind of like killing pursuers, Dean Keller had to make an emergency landing inside an asteroid to do some repairs on his ship. Now, when he did this, a bunch of bounty hunters surrounded that asteroid and kind of covered every exit out. And began to negotiate his surrender with them. Now, while he was negotiating with them, he also was EVAing out of the asteroid and sneaking up on one of the bounty hunter ships. He got inside, he threw the bounty hunter out of the airlock, and then took his ship, turned it on the other bounty hunters, and continued on his way. So that very exciting event happened right here in the Bray asteroid belt. So we're going to step back and go to Nexus 4, which is known by Lago. Now, Lago is a name which came from a 26th century vid about a pirate paradise. So again, this came later on at the Hat the Group left. This became known as Lago based on that 26th century vid. That's how it earned this name, and the UEE just hasn't been able to shake it. The real battle for the Nexus system is centered right here on Lago for one main reason, and that's because the Hathor Group strip mined the surface, which means the pirates are really, really embedded. There are a lot of encampments embedded into the planet side here. It was a lot easier to clean out Nexus 3. Lago has been a lot more difficult. So as the UEE has made small strides in kind of pushing the pirates off this planet, they are trying to figure out ways to hold that land and maybe start to make it habitable for respectable UEE citizens and civilians. They decided to do this by offering sweetheart land deals to people in the military, because again, Nexus 3 has a big military contingent, so they've offered family members and extended family of the military deals to come in and live here. So you can visit Lago 3. The encampments there are still pretty small. They do have what you need. They do have Kasaba outlets. They'll have bars. They'll have advocacy agents. They'll have all those things. They're still just going to be heavily fortified because pirate attacks still do happen pretty frequently on this planet. Also, if you're an entrepreneurial hauler that's looking to maybe make a little bit extra on some basic goods, this might be a good place to take it. That is, if you're willing to accept the risk of even venturing into the Nexus system in the first place. And finally, the last planet here in the system is a gas giant called the Red God. Now, I warn you, this is not to scale. This is way too small for what it should be. But you get the idea. I'll zoom in a little bit. So again, this is just a gas giant on the past the green band here in the Nexus system. It's got a reddish hue, a reddish color to the atmosphere, which is how it earned the nickname the Red God by it is believed a cryptic group of pirates based on Lago by the name of the Sangestas actually worship this planet and called it their Red God, and their worship of this planet and their affiliation to it is what kind of earned it this name, which is stuck to this day. So that's it for the Nexus system. You've got, again, 5 planets, star at the center, this one asteroid belt, and an ongoing battle between pirates and the UEE. For anyone out there that's interested in this game, this could be a pretty fun place to go and explore and see what kind of trouble you can get into or how you can help. So thanks again. My name's Adam Weiser, and this has been another episode of Loremaker's Guide to the Galaxy.